So you were saying about the difference of like the Czech tennis in Czech Republic and Slovakia, right? This like Emil
Yeah,
being Slovakian and coaching a Czech player.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, Emil was coaching a lot in Slovakia, and then when he went to Czech to coach to coach Muchova, I asked him what is the biggest difference between Czech kids or Czech tennis and Slovak tennis, and he told me that in there are so many stars practicing in many clubs there, and they have so many Grand Slam winners and top 100 players, both in men's and women's, that the kids they just feel like it's normal to aim for the Grand Slam victory, Grand Slam title. So uh, he sees that. He told me that it's such a big difference because in Slovakia now we don't have that many players in top 100. No one from men's and one girl is top 100 women. So yeah, that's the biggest difference.
And I feel like also because in Slovakia the system is different, right? We have like the National Tennis Center and like the best players, you don't actually see them so much. So even when we had the best players or when you have the best players, they're not as much part of like the juniors don't see them, or maybe you can go watch them train a little bit, but a lot of times like they're traveling or they're training somewhere else, they go abroad to train or so it's not so it's an interesting topic, right? Of these like role models and how important it is to have role models uh
Mm.
in the country. We see that in Slovakia with the cycling, right? We had Peter Sagan who like the best cyclist in the world, like and we see it like now everybody like is cycling in Slovakia, like it's such a huge, I see this here in Greece that there's since Tsitsipas and Sakari, like the tennis is so huge now in Greece that all the kids are playing and they have the Tsitsipas as a hero for them. um so and what you're saying is then Czech Republic, like you actually can have proximity. You can actually like a lot of the academies, the players actually train there, and the upcoming players can, the ones trying to go pro, the June the 18, 19, 20 year olds, or like they can have a chance to potentially train with them even. That's amazing, right?
True. And maybe even more interesting topic is that nowadays the kids, also from watching interviews of the young players now up and coming, but also talking to my players, uh, there is maybe more trend nowadays that I saw at Australian Open, Lerner Tien, who beat Medvedev, 19 years old, 19-year-old American guy who beat Medvedev, and after that he had the press conference, and they were asking him about his idols and who he was watching growing up, and he said he never watched tennis that much growing up, and he doesn't have any idol. And that's also interesting because nowadays, I mean, the kids they have so much other stuff they can watch, and with the social media and internet, that's also an interesting thing, on the other side.
From my experience, like yes, you have either kids who like they just don't watch tennis, or then you have the other, I wouldn't say extreme, but it's like they watch only highlight reels like on Instagram and
Yeah.
like so they and I think that's the problem there. What I'm noticing, and this is not just in tennis, I think that's in general in the world right now, is that because they only watch highlight reels of the best points, it creates such a pressure on them, like because suddenly it looks like that's normal. Like I should be like this is what tennis looks like,
Yeah.
and then they think I need to be playing these crazy shots all the time, and they don't see like if you don't watch the whole match, you don't see that most of the points are just getting the ball in, get the return in, get the serve in, start the point, build the point, like nothing special as in but which is actually that's the special thing, right? That's the saying goes, like that's the extraordinary thing is that you can do the right thing over and over again, like consistently. Throughout the match, which has much more value than hitting one amazing shot. But that's not what that's not what gets on the highlight reel. So I think in tennis, but in general in society nowadays, I feel like that's like we get these clips and sound bites of different things, and that's sold as like that's what the whole thing is, and then it biases the reality of what it actually is about, and I think it creates this like we talked about before about understanding of the game. So I would call it like the misunderstanding of the game.
Mm, mm. True, and also it's interesting how the tennis match, it's like a movie. It's like you cannot watch only highlights, or you cannot, if you miss some scenes, it
Mm,
doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, when you want to really understand, because the momentum shifting, or maybe the weaker guy plays out of his mind first three games, but he cannot last, or maybe just uh, somehow when you better, it's gonna show somehow, and it doesn't matter, because if you like 60-40 with the guy, and you play one set, maybe you can lose that one set because one lucky break or something like that. But it will show best of three sets, and mostly best of five sets, who is better player. But
mm,
and you can really see, I mean, the phases where the better player gets on top. I
yeah.
mean, it's
No, I really like how you said that about the movie. It reminded me. I saw in one interview that Patrick Mouratoglou talked about how he has like just like a shit ton of like a lot of notebooks because he actually writes notes for every match that his player like they went to watch a player he would like and he called it that he wrote the story of the match.
mm,
And it's like you're saying about the movie that there is like it's a whole story of what happened.
yeah,
And yeah, if you watch only highlights, you don't get the whole story. You don't get the whole
exactly,
picture. It's it's
exactly.
it's important. I'm wondering about the role models, and you said about the guy he hasn't watched anything. I wonder because I just had an experience today actually that I was playing with this just for fun. We play practice sets with this 19-year-old guy who's trying, playing some futures qualies and trying it out. And he had a single-handed backhand, and I talked to him after the sets, and I just gave him some of my opinions, some of my tips on like strategically what he could do and stuff like that. And then I asked him, I was like, you should watch like Federer, right? Like I was like, you should watch Roger. I mean, I was like, I know you're 19, so you actually probably haven't seen a lot of his matches um, live, but I asked him like, have you ever watched any of them? And he was like, no. And I was like, for me, it was surprising, right? Because especially with someone who with a single-handed backhand, which is such a very so specific of like in terms of strategy and how like clearly most of the time that's like a weaker shot and how you need to use the slice to set up the ball for the forehand and all these things. And Federer was such a genius and strategically at that it's so interesting that yeah if you don't watch it it's hard to kind of understand. But at the same time, like on the other hand, I would say like to balance it out how much does it also limit you, right? So this is maybe the interesting question, like how much the having a role model, like how much it inspires you and how much it like closes your, like this is the only way to do it, or I'm just copying someone and not finding your unique style. So that's a
Mm. But I mean, it depends how you take it. I mean, you can take it as an inspiration, how to build up the point, as you said, or you can watch it as that you want to have his shoes, or his forehand. And with the watching of tennis, and mostly learning strategies, I mean, I have 2 points. I mean, first, I really wish that some of the TV channels would broadcast more from the court level view because
Yeah.
then you can see all of the
Yeah.
decisions, and that's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
for the tennis lover, I guess that's the best camera.
Well, that's one of my dreams, right? That you could have
Exactly,
you could have a button that you could switch.
exactly,
You could just switch the view.
exactly.
Because they have the camera out there anyway, right?
Exactly,
It would be
exactly.
so easy, right?
Yeah, I would pay also subscription for that. So yeah, that would be crazy. Good. And the other way is I understood more how you can really learn or understand the game from watching it. When I started to play paddle, and I didn't have that much time to really go there every day and to practice. And I realized that because paddle doesn't have that big of a requirements, uh, technical requirements. Like we as a tennis players, we can play after 4 or 5 times, we can play all of the shots. I mean, there are some variation in the smashes, but we can learn it very quickly. And all of the tennis players, they just pick up very fast every shot. But the most difficult thing is the shot selection. And I realized that I played just few. I played like 2 3 months paddle, but I really loved to watch it, and I watched it 4 5 hours a day, just the decisions pro pro players are making. And only from watching, I'm always saying that I learned paddle from YouTube because I learned all of the shots, all of the decisions from which ball, what should you play, and how to be one thought in front of the opponent. And that's just amazing. The and you can do the same with tennis, but tennis, the only difficult or the most difficult thing is that I mean, you have to be technically very sound, and you have to be physically very quick and everything. When you wanna play against the best players, you really have to play against them. So it doesn't. It requires more skill, but still, if you can be one thought in front, it will help a lot.
And also if if you're clear on what you're doing, that you have a game plan, you have a much better chance of executing also technically and
Yeah,
movement wise because you're not scattered, like hitting a ball and still not making a decision.
yeah,
You can be much more committed to what you're doing because you
yeah,
know you know why you're doing it. That's the key there. Like if you don't know why you're doing something, your commitment to it,
yeah,
and that's just in general, right? But so if you have a clear strategy that you believe in, that you can, you know, sell yourself on, as we talked about last time,
mm,
then each shot like is has a purpose,
mm,
and you can feel the difference, you know, the shot that if somebody's hitting the shot with purpose or without purpose, you know. It can be even look the same from the outside, but for the player who's receiving it, on the other hand, you can feel the difference.
yeah,
Uh, and I think that's just to kind of maybe jump away a little bit, but from the understanding of the game, I like to think of it like not where you want to hit, but like what do you want to do to the opponent.
yeah,
And that brings me back to because we talked about watching tennis, but I think also maybe we should say also what does it because you can watch tennis through different filters. What I mean by that, like what are you actually looking for when you're watching tennis?
yeah,
Right? Like when you watch tennis, you might see different things that I do that somebody else does. So in my opinion, actually, what helps a lot, even for like a more like you know like somebody with less experience, like it's important, I think, to find a good commentator. Because I think that a lot of people don't maybe don't even watch, like even if they watch, they don't actually listen to the commentator, and a lot of them and all the commentators are not that good anyway. But if you have like somebody who like actually provides good insights, they can open your eyes amazingly that they just tell you like this is what's happening and suddenly you see it there, you know.
Mhm.
Or or you watch tennis with your coach or with with somebody who has more experience and you talk about it.
Yeah.
Um so and the last thing I would say, like what we talked about earlier today when we speak on the phone, I was telling you about the that nobody also like records their matches, that people don't even watch their own tennis,
Yeah. Yeah.
which if you don't record the matches and you don't watch them, you don't see what decisions you're making. You can't learn from the
Yeah.
experiences and then implement it into practice. Like in my opinion, like if the coach who doesn't see their player like play a match either live or like on video, and video is better, right? Because you can watch it over and over again and stop it and watch it with the player and etc. Right? So I think that would be one of my biggest recommendations to parents and coaches, just like start recording matches because the coach doesn't even have to go to the tournament. You can just record the match and you can because that's the kind of the excuse a lot of people have, like the that coaches like they don't want to go to the matches, or if they go they that it's expensive because they're like, okay, if I travel I want to get paid because it's expensive for the parents, and that's why it doesn't happen most of the time. So I
True.
think the recording the matches and watching them exactly for these reasons, like we're talking about, like watching tennis, it's so important.
True. And it's so common just because the tennis is so I mean so hard technically.
Mm.
I mean, most of the players and coaches just get lost over and over in the technical aspect of the game, and they don't really get to the game part. And the game part, uh, unless you really like set when you're 13, 14, 15, like the best players most probably, and maybe even then, when the guy is losing, they just ask or they just look for a psychologist to fix their game because they don't. Then again, they skip the game part. I mean, there's the technical. Okay, that's the coach. Then there's game, and then there's psychological. Okay, that's the psychologist. And where is the game part? I mean, the game part is so important, and a lot of yeah, a lot of people just skip it.
And then what you said about the best players who are like 12, 13, 14, I think what happens there is like there's like a tipping point, right? Like the kids who are just a little bit like understanding, maybe it's in them and they like are more understand games. Like either someone taught them, which is more rare, like you said, like we're saying, like a lot of coaches like focus much more on technique, especially at the younger age, because that's when it seems like that's the problem. And it
Mhm.
is like for a big part, for sure. It's a big
Yeah,
percentage of that is also technique. And I love technique. So that's but what happens, I think, is it's like a upward spiral, right? Because the young kids who understand the game part and then they're able to utilize it and win matches, what happens is they play more matches. Why? Because they're not losing first round of tournaments, but they're losing, third, fourth, or playing semifinals, which means that every single tournament suddenly like they're playing 4 or 5 matches. So compared to the guy who lost in the first round, they have 5 more matches of experience, which is which is experience, not just like game-wise experience, but playing different players, playing under pressure, playing hitting more shots, just purely mathematically. They just over the weekend or 4 days, they just hit like 5 times more shots than the guy who lost in the first round.
yeah,
And then that just takes off, and after, like few years of that, the gap is just widening and widening and widening because
exactly, exactly.
there's a great story from Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you know his famous book called Outliers, and he described when they found this in the hockey league in Canada, one of the best ice hockey leagues, and there was a interesting statistic that most of the best players were actually born in the first 3 months of the year, like January, February, March, like was their like birthday. And then they're thinking like why that is, and they found out it's because like when the kids are like 6, 7, 8 years old when they're starting hockey, at that young age, when you like January or November or October, those like 7, 8 months are such a
Mm,
huge difference in like physicality and thinking and development that the January, February, March, like compare, even though they're in the same age group, like year wise, they're like better. And then what they do when they're selecting for like this is the A team, B team, C team, whatever. So the January, February, March players, most of them like are put into the better team based on just by being older and having more ability. And that team receives like better coaches, better training, more
mm,
playing time, etc. And then they just take off. And like
yeah,
multiple years later, even the best players are the ones
mm,
who are just because they were born earlier.
yeah, yeah,
So in tennis we don't have that, but I mean to a certain extent, but not as much. But in tennis, the game part is if you can actually teach. Look at opposite, right? If you can teach your young player the game part of tactics and how to win at a really young age, meaning they will get more matches and more experience, they will actually like get better just through that.
yeah. And of course, it's important to aim for that you play cards and you have four aces. You have the serve, forehand, backhand, movement, and you have the four aces, then you can play easier. I mean, the cards. It is easy. But when you're developing, maybe it's like you just have two aces and you have 10 and you have nine, and you have to be able to play with that. Not talking also about that there are days when you don't have the four aces and you have to be able to figure out. So, but from my experience, I can say that I was struggling a lot with backhand and and for like not for a month or a year, but for mostly all of my career, I mean, or maybe 10 years. And then when I switched to one-handed backhand, and when I figure out how to play, and when the backhand went where I wanted the backhand go, it just opens up just the new world of possibilities.
Mm.
Most and and not only possibilities, but also that you don't get. It's like I believe that 90% of players, they're struggling technically, and also like of course recreational players, but also young players, and also players that are not that good. 90% of all of the players in the world, when you struggle technically, then when you want to play the game, I mean, a lot of time happens that just because uh, just because something is not working, it's very hard to concentrate on the game. And
Mm.
then you start to what should I do with the forehand or the serve? I have to adjust or whatever. And but when you have it complete and you can only focus on the game part, it's just different level. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right. They go hand in hand. Like it's
Yeah.
the same because perfect example from today actually that with this 19-year-old player I was playing and then afterwards we were talking and I was asking him, he had a single-handed backhand and he was just and a lot of the times he was serving like he couldn't get the kick into my backhand. He couldn't like properly hit the kick serve into all the way to my backhand. Um which allowed me to kind of move around and pressure his single-handed, backhand with my forehand return. Um and a lot of times it looked like he wasn't even trying to go for it though, right? And then I
Mm,
talked to him after, like, why don't you hit, first serve kick or something? And then I found out that actually he just doesn't know how to like as well. And he didn't know how to because he had problems with his ball toss. Like his ball toss was a little bit all over the place and he didn't know how to fix the ball toss. And because his ball toss was so all over the place, he couldn't like toss it in a good position to hit the kick. And it's clear it's how it goes hand in hand, right? So because technically he wasn't able to hit the kick, he didn't even get to the point of thinking about I should be hitting the kick because it's strategically a better option because he just
yeah.
doesn't have the option.
Yeah.
So it's like it's almost like like you have like a blind spot. Like if you don't have it technically right, it doesn't come to you as a like cards is the cards is a good analogy, right? Like you play the cards that you have. So if you don't have the card, you're not even thinking about the strategy of using the card, how to use the card because you just don't have the card. So you don't even think about it. You don't see it in
Mm,
front of you because it's not in your hand. You know, it's in the deck. So so it goes hand in hand, right? Like the technique is that you have more cards on your hand, more different cards and more variety. So then the more variety you have, the more combinations you can then create. And Federer was an amazing example of that. That's why he's, you know, one of the best of all time. Uh,
mm,
because he had so many different weapons and he but then he could use them also. That's the other thing, right? Because then
mm,
you have players more be like a good example is like Dimitrov, like Grigor Dimitrov, who everyone was saying is like the next Federer because he was just so similar and had all the similar like weapons and everything. And clearly, like maybe, you know, like and he achieved like great things, but something like tennis IQ wise, he was just not as there as much as Federer, even though
mm,
having a
mm,
lot of similar cards maybe.
mm. Yeah, true.
So it definitely goes hand in hand. I want to ask you, because using the card analogy, I remember you told me in the past that when you work with your players, um, and I think this is important that I think a lot of coaches and myself included, a lot of times like making this mistake that when we speak to the players about the strategy or about the decision they just made. So now we're talking about, okay, if we actually go and teach the players the game. Um, You told me that you like to see the player as like to see what cards they have.
Mm,
Because a lot of times the mistake we have is like, okay, why didn't you just play this? Because in our mind, that was a better option, but maybe they don't have that option technically, as we just talked about. They don't have that card in their hand.
yeah.
And it's so I want to ask you about it because you told me that you're doing this, that you can see that what cards they have and what option. So my question is, what does help you disassociate or kind of like forget like what you know and kind of like feel like okay, like to see only the options that are available to the player, you know, to kind of play with the hand that the player plays. Like,
All right. Yeah, I mean, I remember reading a book, Winning Ugly by Brett Gilbert, and he speaks a lot about strengths and weaknesses. And if you just look even at the match where you don't have a player, or maybe you have player, but you can see after a few three games, and mostly also it comes from that I was scouting my opponents all my life, and it's like 20 years you are watching and and you are scouting the opponent, so you realize, okay, I know that, okay, these are his strengths, his weaknesses, I mean, even from the warm up and then after a few games, and these are my strengths, my weaknesses, or the other players strengths and weaknesses, and then you can really like you also it comes from experience because I played so many matches that you already have like the types, of the players. And even when I was coached by Miloslav Mečír, he coached me by nationalities.
hmm,
Like he was like, okay, you play Russian. Okay, you have to be very careful because if you give him a chance, he will just stick with it. He will bite until the end, and it's gonna. So just start good from the beginning and try to keep him down, always down, because when he's up, he's very dangerous. When you play South American players, they're like, like they want to look good on the court, and they are just I don't know how you say it. I mean, they
carnival.
just well, yeah,
Carnival, you know, like the
yeah,
big
yeah, 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 and they are like this. So the when you play Spanish players, they're working hard. Really, if you play American players, they are very like strategic, good serve, good forehand, bad backhand, and a little bit stiff. And
search and destroy, like is the American.
yeah, yeah. So you
Yeah.
have the types of players, or maybe just like after few games, if the guy on the other side is more offensive and likes to have a control of the game, or is more defensive and likes to counterpunch, or is really like just moonballer, or really goes for it, you know? And there are not that many types. So you already have some tactics because in the past you already beat this kind of guy, and you know that okay, maybe also you know that these type of players they don't play that good when there's beginning of the set, maybe, but very good when they are simple. Let's say I don't know, Berrettini, good serve, good forehand, and he plays the best in the tiebreak or serving out the match. But when you play against counterpunchers, maybe you know that you maybe can get more chances when he's 5-4 and he's serving for the set. You know that he's not gonna serve you out of the court, you know? And and there, I mean, a few things here and there, and you just yeah, made a tactic because of the type of the player you play against, or maybe Spanish guys that you know he likes to run around a lot, the forehand, so you play more to the forehand fast, or you know, like this guy doesn't like to run, this guy loves to run, but he cannot play when you just give him to the middle, and he doesn't know what to do with the shot. So there are, yeah, I mean, things here and there, and if you just if we can go type by type, I mean, what to expect and what you can do.
Yeah, and I think that that's also maybe something we can do in the future. That would be interesting to
Yeah.
talk about for me. Also, it's interesting. And what you said about countries, it's super interesting, right?
Mm.
How the culture plays a big part in the mentality of the
Yeah.
person, and based on their attitude, their mentality, their psychology, it affects like how they play, how they express themselves. Because at the end of the day, I like to say that even tennis is the it's like it's your expression. Like it's like art, you know,
Mm.
you express yourself based on how you are. And I think that's what we talked about last time. That's also where um, how tennis can be like a self-development. Is that when you get it pushes you to explore parts of yourself that you maybe are not so comfortable with. For example, somebody who's like great defensive player, and maybe, you know, they're also the type of person who doesn't maybe is not so like doesn't like conflict so much, and they're more like diplomatic and this, and it shows in their game also. They're more like just thinking and being cool, and but like more just placing the balls, but they're not so good at stepping into the court and just trying to go for a winner or something and attacking. It's just not in their personality. I was like this, for example, and still am. A little bit, but I could see even in myself as like develop more of that in my personality of like not be so afraid of conflicts, and be able to have like be more assertive and all this. Also in my tennis, I was much more able to step inside a court and go for a shot. So it's interesting how the tennis pushes you, the professional, and not just tennis, like any professional sport, but especially with tennis, what we're just talking about, these different types and different players you have to play in different strategies, and suddenly you hit like a ceiling, right? Because if you don't have a part of the game and the guys figure it out, then you're done. So then you reach a point where you have to decide, like either I rediscover, and you know, in psychology it's say like integrate this part of my personality, and it also shows this part of my game, whatever it is, whether it's being more patient or being more aggressive or whatever it is, or I'm just not gonna go further.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. I spoke this week with one of my friends, and he used to be a soccer player, and but he always loved, and he was our friend. He was a soccer player, but he loves to play also tennis, and he was playing tennis all his life, even when he played soccer, and until this day. And he told me that from his point of view, because he has a lot of friends, soccer friends, and also tennis friends, and I realized he told me that that it's such a big difference between sportsmen from team sports
Mm.
and sportsmen from the individual sports. He said that, and from his point of view, because we don't see that much now, no, probably because I mean we are not in contact with the team players, but from his point of view, he said it's just amazing, and it's probably because of the responsibility that you have to make for yourself, and you are alone there, and also all of the decisions where to play tournaments and everything, and also that you have to be the forward, you have to be the defense, you have to be right wing, left wing, you have to be the goalkeeper in your team,
Mhm.
and you have to figure it out, and you have to all of the parts of your personality somehow discover.
Mm. And you have to be the coach also, which is a big thing,
Exactly.
right? Like nowadays in soccer, we know that is like the manager is the genius who has all the
Yeah.
he's the coach who's like telling and the players are just executing. I mean, especially American football is an amazing example of that, where it's so specialized, where like the player is literally like this is your one job
Yeah.
that you have to master and do over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, it's so special. And you're right, like in tennis you have to be all those players and all of those personalities you have to try to discover in you to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Because like we are saying in previous episodes, like you know that's the best quality. That's the one. If I had to say one quality that a tennis player needs, but I think a human or anyone needs, especially in today's world, is adaptability. Because you know, but in tennis especially because the pro game, you're traveling all the time. You're in a different time zone, different altitude, so the balls fly different. There's different types of balls, different surfaces different, you wake up, you feel different, your body feels like, different shots are working on a different day. One day like your forehand's working, other day it's not, and like backhand's so
Mm.
even your cards change, like you're dealt different cards almost, like although some of them might be like similar because you have some like specific strengths, but even then like you might
Yeah.
be dealt different cards where like suddenly in one match like this one shot is not working and something else is working.
Mm.
So you have to be super adaptable
Mm.
and to figure it out. So like we said, the more personalities, the more options you have available, the more adaptable you are.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, we could see on the old guys, Federer, even Andy Murray, Nadal, when they were losing because they were getting older, they were losing half a step, then one step, then two steps maybe in the rally. They have to adapt and they have to be more aggressive. I mean, they often talk about it that they have to, or even also Andy Murray when he wanted to win the Grand Slams, he had or win Wimbledon, he had to be more aggressive, even though he started the career as a more defensive player or maybe more thinker and tactically more, but then he had to
yeah.
implement the attack.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I wanted to ask you about the go back to nationalities a little bit. Like, was there any what was your well first of all, what do you think like us like from Slovakia, what do you think is the culturally our kind of game style in your experience?
I mean, the Slovaks, they lack confidence. I mean, the most important thing is that, yeah, we lack confidence and to win big titles or to serve out the matches. That's probably the biggest flaw we have. And but I believe now even Novak Djokovic when he played Australian Open and he played first, I guess he played Lehečka, then he played Machac, and he was talking about that. Okay, they have nice Czech backhand because they play half year indoor and half year outdoor. So in the indoor, most of the European country players, mostly, I mean, the Scandinavians and also German, Slovak, French guys. We have a good backhand because we play on very fast courts. Maybe nowadays is more clay, but it used to be very, very hard, very, very, very fast surfaces. So, so, and we have a good history of former good players and now coaches. So the technique is mostly, I mean, nice, and we play similar backhands,
Mhm.
all of us. And yeah, that's maybe it. And yeah, I wouldn't say there's a specific because we are different, but these are the two things. I mean, lack of confidence and similar style a little bit.
Yeah, what I also see is I think because historically, there was obviously like the Soviet Union and all the socialism, all these things, and you can see in the game styles in Slovaks also. There's like they're not very different. Like everyone kind of plays the
Mm,
same style, so you don't see like these different personalities.
mm,
Uh, and if you when you do, and there's something we talked about last time, right? That that kind of makes the difference between the average like good player or pretty good player and like the best players is like the best players actually can embrace their like unique personality and they're not afraid to stick out because that's what makes them extraordinary, extra
mm,
from the ordinary, like makes them different. So I think that's historically, I feel like in Slovakia that was a like culturally that was a issue. Like you want to be kind of you don't want to be judged and like sticking out of the norm and all this. So this, for example, with Americans, like you see, this is completely different, right? Like culturally,
exactly.
where you see players who have like maybe even terrible like the technique's not that great, but they just go for it, and it's like that's just my unique style of how I play, and they and they might be even more effective just because they believe so much like in like it's gonna work. Like
Yeah.
I don't care how it looks. Like I'm not looking for like some perfect technique or making sure that it looks nice. um so there's a different level of confidence with the cards they have. And a lot of
Yeah.
times the Slovaks they might have even like better cards and they are not sure they can win the game with good cards, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is different between with the Czech Republic, right? Because we have a history together. Like and the Czech tennis have been, and we talked about this, like we mentioned this earlier, the Czech tennis is more successful. What do you think is in the mentality, or how the Czechs play differently?
Mm. I mean, I would say that Czech, just because in Slovakia we just have, like you said, one centrum. I mean, and that's Bratislava. Now they build also a national tennis center in Košice, but it's gonna take time to develop and everything. But if you want to be a good tennis player, you have to be in Bratislava, and that's why also everybody plays different, same coaches and everything. And also Slovakia is so small that if you go to play tournaments, every player is there and everybody sees everybody. It's just such a big difference if you play, let's say, France, and you can see you won't find two similar French players in history. I mean, there is Santoro, there is Benoit Paire, and there are, I mean, everybody's different because they have so many prize money tournaments and so many cent centers that they can play. I mean, if you're in Bordeaux, Toulouse, where you can play tennis, you can be good, and you just go and you play, and nobody tell you that you are playing wrong. You shouldn't be playing like Santoro, or you just play. And this and in between is Czech, because in Czech there is Prostov and Burdig and these players. Uligrach was there, and they have also Ostrava, they have Přerov, they have Karlovy Vary, they have Prague. Prague is of course the biggest, but they have so many. They have Frýdek Místek, and they, I mean, they have so many also. I mean, big centras where they can practice in good with the good coaches and everything. So it's more spread, I guess. And also somehow the culture is different between Czech and Slovak, because in Czech, I believe there is still kind of like club life, more
Mm.
club life. I mean, you can play tennis in a small village in, I don't know, in the north of the Czech,
Yep.
and you still have a nice club where they're playing 90-year-old guys, and also young kids, and also I mean, they have the clubhouse and everything, and they spend and they have a lot of tournaments, and in every bigger city lives a Grand Slam champion, more or less, or maybe top 100 players. So it's like for them, it's still a little bit not easy, but I mean very, I mean, visible um, target to reach something, or to fight for the better life, or to have a good life through tennis. It used to be a lot when there was a communism, or after communism, where there was a chance to travel just because of the tennis. But now it's still like they have so many examples even now. Even there, like Fruvirtova sisters, Kovachkova sisters. They they are in 14, 15, 16. They're almost top 100 WTA.
So it's interesting what you said about the club life, which is and I guess that makes sense that they're like because Czech Republic is closer to Germany and we know that Germany is exactly that's they have amazing this club life when it comes to tennis and and the social aspect, right? I think it's so important because as I said multiple times before, like we have to look at it like, you know, you're a tennis player, but you're actually first you're human. And as humans, we're social animals.
Mm,
So the social aspect of if you have the club life and like you said different generations are playing which attracts then you know the whole families are there which creates this atmosphere this mood of like it's much more support and this is just what we do and then it also creates like healthy competition because like different clubs play against each other so it's like we want to improve because we want to beat the next club in the next village or something you know so and it's fun like you know so it's I think like my guess is what that creates, what that helps to create this club life and social aspect is what we talked about last time actually, this sense of lifestyle that like playing tennis is just part of my life as
yeah,
opposed to a goal oriented
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
You know, in Slovakia, I feel like it's much more like, okay, I have to get individual coach, many hours. I don't want to practice with anyone else because I don't like want them to be like help them become better because I need to beat them in the next tournament or something. So there's not as much communication, and everyone's like it's much more, you know, individualistic. Everyone's doing their own thing and there's not as much just connection and helping you know helping each other out and talking
yeah,
between you know like the two of us being Slovakian and like doing this what we're doing right now is a it's more of a rarity I would say
yeah.
you know two coaches sharing like ideas and asking each other you know for help with stuff it's a you don't see that so much so I think the social aspect and the club life, which you see in all actually the best, like in Spain, in France, in Germany, in Czech Republic, like it's in, now I'm thinking about it, like actually that might be one of the key elements of the countries from where consistently there are the best players come from these countries where you have the strongest kind of social aspect to tennis. That
Mm,
because that also makes that there is much more, like you said, there's much more tournaments, so there's much more experience for the players to go. Like we said before, that the player can have from a young age much more matches played, much more experience. So, you know, statistically, they're just like getting better and better through just more matches, and there's more money, you know, in the system because more people are just playing it, so there's much more support. Um, Yeah, it's interesting that seems like that could be one of the key factors. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Czech they have period now when there's great balance between the lifestyle and enjoying better life and the camaraderie and the club life and the hunger. Because I believe in Germany, after Boris Becker and Steffi Graf, now they have Zverev, but Zverev is Russian. But so they don't have any. Or and when you compare the women's, I mean German and Czech,
Yeah.
it's uncomparable. Such a
Yeah.
small country to win. I don't know. It was like from last 6 years they won 5 times Fed Cup. I mean, come on. I mean, US has like 350 million and Czech has 10 million. So it's 35 more. I mean, it's just amazing. So I believe the hunger because Czech is not Germany and also not the States. So there is not that many people. They have unbelievable life where they go to the job and they make, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 10,000 a month. It doesn't work like that in Czech. So they have the hunger and they have the club life. And that's just amazing, I believe.
That's very interesting what you said, right? Because it's like they're in this golden, it's like that
Exactly.
zone where there's enough affluence, there's enough money, and there's like people have good enough lives where there's not as much pressure that like we have to do it to like to survive, and that's like our only chance to,
Yeah.
you know, but not as much that they would like not need it.
Yeah.
So because it's true when you think about most of the affluent countries, but except okay, like the Russia and US, but I think that's a different the difference there is because US, for example, even though it's affluent, but it is and it's not, right? Because as a country it is, but you also have a lot of people, a lot of players who actually come from like from socioeconomically like lower income. So there's still that hunger there. But also there's so it's the same thing. There's the hunger there, but there is the club life. Like there's a lot of centers, there's a lot of clubs that you can play at. So
And also expertise. Czech, they also have expertise
the
because now.
know-how, yeah, the know-how,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because now I watch also an interview with Tomáš Berdych, who is a new Davis Cup captain. I mean,
Mhm.
come on. I mean, you have a Wimbledon finalist and top 10 player Davis Cup captain. I mean, what more you could have? It's amazing.
Yeah. That's a good point, right? Because you see that like in Asian countries, for example, how they for many years now they've been trying to like like make it in tennis, and tennis was never that popular and started,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult for them to get it going because of the know-how and the expertise
Mm,
is not there just because they haven't been doing it, historically for a long time.
mm,
The same thing I see in Greece now a lot, being in Greece,
mm,
even though like yes, Tsitsipas like like made it, but he's half Russian also.
mm,
Um, but I see that yeah, there's no yeah, they're exactly at that point where there's a lot of kids and there's like a lot of hunger, like to do it because of the inspiration, but the infrastructure is not there. There's no club life, there's no academies, no centers. So it's kind of like you have you planting your seeds in the soil that's just mud, so it's very difficult to grow something like no matter how many seeds, like how many, and in this case like the seeds are the kids who are inspired to do something with tennis,
mm,
don't have the good soil for that. It's very difficult.
mm.
So it reminds me last time when we talked, you what was your experience with that? Because we remember we said that like you came to like 220 in the world, and then the, what was your experience in terms of the sparring partners, and what we're just talking about, that maybe not having either like a role model, having someone who's there to kind of practice with that can pull you up, where you were saying that in Czech Republic they have in these centers, or like moving, which is obviously that's tough, right? That's the big step of like moving somewhere to
Mm,
Spain or France or even
mm.
Czech Republic, right? That's that to have better. Did you ever think about that, or it never came across your mind, or what was your experience with?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I thought about it, and I believed believe it could have been, I mean, maybe good decision. At least something had the possibility to change. I mean, there was something that maybe I could have figured out. Maybe if you never know who you meet and who just gives you some tips. I saw it with you, a few tips here and there, and it could make such a big difference. So I mean, you never know, and I believe that I recommend it to any struggling tennis player who just beating the ceiling to try something like that, because it could have been. I mean, it can be cha life changer. So yeah, but I never really thought about that, and I never really wanted to go to the academy. But now I see a lot of tennis Slovak young players. They are going to Prostov because it's not that far. Some of them they are going also to Prague to the centrums because I mean, as we said, they have the good coaches and they have the good facilities, good players. So yeah, so it's great idea to go.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's it's incredibly difficult. I understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
especially if you have a child, like you're not gonna move as a whole family, or what are you gonna do? But for a pro, like you said, like for someone who's like, 19, 20, 21, however many years old, and you're struggling and you're kind of stuck and you don't know what else to do, it's a lot of times you have to change something, like just putting yourself in a new environment. But it goes back to what we talked about, that self-development, what I was saying about, the integrating the different personalities, or allowing yourself to unlock different parts of you. It's part of that too, because it's so uncomfortable, right? It's such a jump into the unknown that you have to suddenly like change countries, and like you have, a lot of friends where you are, and the coaches, and it's comfortable, right? To be where you are. So I think that's a huge jump into the unknown. That's a lot of times is necessary when you hit that ceiling, because as we said uh, last time, it's kind of the known is what's a lot of times is keeping you, like in your case, let's for example at the 220, right? Like you hit your ceiling because of your identity of who you are and what your
yeah,
beliefs are, and all of that is filled, like they say, you're the average of the five per people you hang out with the most. So the places you go to, people you talk to, what you listen, and which culture you are, all these things are affecting you on levels that you're not even aware of, and you don't know, like you said, like just going to a different country, different culture, uh, might give you an insight, or change perspective that can actually then translate to moving past that ceiling, that moving past that block, whatever it is. And it might not even be like a conscious, like someone tells you something that you like, there's like an aha moment, but just suddenly happens. And because
yeah.
unconsciously something happened that you might not even be like aware of. But definitely if you don't, it's like what is it? Trying doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome is the definition of.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I was thinking about that when I was
Yeah.
speaking. I wanted to say, when also like it's a good hack for young players to, if they are thinking about it, to do it like when they really young. Because if you are 24, 25, 26, I mean, and you have a girlfriend and you have I mean already life at home and everything, maybe apartment. I mean you won't, and if you have a kids, it's over more or less. So it's I mean
It gets it. I don't know if it's over, but it gets definitely harder and harder, right? Because the
yeah,
more attachments you have, the harder the
exactly, exactly,
decision, of course. That
exactly.
I mean, I think one potential solution that's doable. I mean, it's not everywhere in the world, but in Europe, we're lucky. I think in Europe that the distances are not so big, and I think it's important, which I would recommend. That I've done it, when I was younger, and I see a lot of good players. What they were doing, they were playing tournaments like in Czech, in Austria, and Hungary. So like to go across the border, to not stay stuck in your bubble, but so that you don't have to actually move, your whole life there, but at least like, even, and I'm not saying, not everyone has the finances to fly like long distances, but you could, especially in Europe, it's you can get in the car and it's not that far to like just across the border and to a different country and go play a tournament there, or
Mhm.
go to a club there, find a club or academy there, and just go there for a little bit, like during the summer holidays or something like that when you have time, just to experience a different culture, different point of view, different, coaching habits and styles. So I think that could be a good solution that I would recommend to like a parent,
Mhm.
who has a child that's serious about tennis and they want to support a child, and they have the means. I would to go during summer holidays, to explore different.
True, and I would say I mean to the parents that I believe the most important thing is that they speak to someone who really has the best interest to help their son or daughter, and who has the expertise, because it's not like, because a lot of the players, they don't know what is happening, and maybe they are trying and they spending a lot of money for this coach or that academy, and they don't really know why the kid is not performing as they imagine. But if they speak with someone who has the expertise and he can name the things he's missing, that's also a big help. And I believe it's hard to find. I mean, people they can really like say, okay, this guy, he just there's no way with the technique, there's no way with that behavior, there's no way with the understanding of the game, there's no way with the practices he has or the structure of the practices. So if everything is fine and it's just the ceiling is the problem, then it's fine. But most of the times it's not that. Yeah.
I know, and then of course it's difficult to recognize who the expert is, right? For somebody who doesn't know, like for a parent
Exactly.
that has
Exactly.
no idea, it's just like came to a local club because most of the time it's convenience because it's just close to where they live, and a lot of times it's just that, right? And like my advice usually, what I tell people is like, they say the tree by the fruit. Um, so so you want to look at, what is the outcome? Like look at people. Like usually, like when I coach people, I tell them, you know, if you go somewhere or someone, like if you want to pick a coach or somebody to train you and you don't know who, like go to different clubs and like look at players. Don't go to coaches. Look at players that you like how they play.
Mm,
When you look at them play, it looks good. And when I say looks good, because for someone who doesn't know tennis, they might not know what's good, not good, but you can see, I believe, that it just they look relaxed, they look happy when they play, it looks like it's easy for them, and all these are signs of good technique, that it
mm,
looks natural, that they're not struggling or they're not, getting frustrated or angry, because if they're getting frustrated or angry, then it's also a sign of not being tactically good because they don't know what to do. on
Mm.
the court to win, so that's why they're frustrated or angry. So look at players who are showing those signs and ask them who's coaching you, you
Sure.
know.
It's a good
So
tip.
look for the fruit and then look for the tree where that fruit came from. Don't look for the tree and then hope for to the fruit that you want. Um, so so that's what I tell people, and when it comes to this, especially like parents, and because a lot of times, like you said, a lot of times it's they don't know, and then you make the decision, and then time passes, and then already you have bad habits, especially as a kid, like they learn so fast and somebody teaches them bad habits and then they're like it's the opposite of the upward spiral I said before when you become like really good really quickly and you're beating the other players and which means you're playing more matches and you're going up and it's like the opposite direction like you're losing first round every tournament and then you're getting frustrated because you don't know why you're losing even and it's not working and after a while you just like lose interest in the or even worse you get injured or something because
Mm. Mm.
so that's yeah so look for the fruit and then ask about the tree.
That's true.
Cool. So I think we're good for
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. That's okay.
Basically covered. I really like this topic that we talked about today of just to kind of I'm just trying to kind of summarize in my mind, right, like what we talked about and this idea of the club life and finding the right club with the right coach and the right environment and how much that plays a role of having the role models and having the people around you who can inspire you and you can also model and have the right coaches who can to get you on that upward spiral to teach you not just technique to recognize that it's not just teaching technique, but also the game and seeing if the coach is also talking to the player about like where to play and why to play there and the different strategy and tactics, or is it just technique? Um, so having those two aspects, I would say that there's a good social aspect, there's a good social life in the club, and it's fun. And also the kids, it's so important that they have friends, and not just tennis wise, that they have different players to play against. So they have good practice and experience. But also, if you have friends, that then you can travel to tournaments, and then you can like split the costs of the tournament, so it makes it easier. Because like, for example, like one parent can take like two or three kids in the car, like they can organize together, and so there all these things suddenly become much easier when you have a good social and aspect of the club, and so the social aspect and the coach teaching the game also and talking about the game and
Yeah.
watching tennis, like we said, watching tennis and recording the matches and talking about it.
Yeah. And also, we spoke also today already that what most parents don't realize how big of value and how important it is in tennis or individual sport like this when it's one against one, the quality of the players practicing with. That's just, I mean, so important. It's like if I would put it the simplest way, it's like it's almost impossible in tennis to be on the highest level only with the coach and not to have good people to practice with. Then there's bigger, if we just put it on the total opposite side, if you have a good environment with good players, you can become even top player. I mean, even Kyrgios doesn't have a coach now, or there were so many players. They just grew up just by playing against each other, and they maybe got lucky. Maybe they were so talented that they didn't needed the coach that much. But if you have both, it can go so much faster and it it could go to the top of the top, because if you just practice without the coach, it takes such a long time to figure out the things by your own self. I mean, it's nice, and it's gonna help you a lot, and you're gonna learn a lot. But there is also in our now time, there is so much information that it's not enough 24 hours to just everything figure out by yourself. And if you have someone who can just fast forward the journey and to go faster, that's the best model.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because what you're saying that, on one hand, you can either play a lot of matches and get experience because you're unconscious, you're learning even without learning. Like you
Yeah.
just by playing it after a while, you start seeing patterns and you start recognizing the game side of the tennis. If There's a big if though, I would say, because you can, but you can also get stuck in patterns,
Yeah.
especially what we talked about. If you're playing in the same culture, like you only play in this bubble
Yeah.
with the same players, then everyone playing the same style, and after a while, like you only see a specific type of players, like you were saying, that like it's the same culture. Every culture is different, and you see this a lot with like in Slovakia, especially with like young junior players, right? Who play like who can be the best in Slovakia and like really good, and then they go play internationally and they lose, not because they would be like not much worse, just because like they suddenly play against players with completely different style from different country and they don't know how to play against it because they never actually played against that style, right?
Mm.
So I think, yeah, so on one hand you can play a lot of matches and learn that way. On the other hand, you can have the coach like talk you through it. And that then it's up to coach kind of also to know the different styles. So that helps a lot. So that's how you can fast forward even if you don't play different cultures, but the coach knows what the different styles are, and then you can try to implement it into practices and drills and all these things, then you can do it that way, I think too. But like you said, if you have both, that's the for sure that's the best solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, great conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, see you. Bye.
Thanks.